So today we're going to be talking about how we made 82K in a little under 3 weeks, I do believe, without any extravagant paid advertising. And we've got very little.
We didn't have any paid advertising at all.
Without any paid advertising. And
or social media, to be fair. Not traditionally posting and stuff.
No, not traditional social media. Essentially defying all the norms that are going around at the moment. Ooh, you gotta post on social media all the time.
We avoid it like the plague. Well, okay, let me just give them the stats so they can get some perspective. I've got them in front of me. I've got a spreadsheet. I'm autistic. Of course I've got a spreadsheet. We've made in this year, from the beginning, we've made 104K in sales. This is direct sales, this isn't revenue. This is direct sales from the process we're about to talk about. 104K in sales. And then in the last 3 weeks, we've done 82. The reason for the disproportionate skew there is we took our foot off the accelerator deliberately to get some things set up. And 3 weeks ago, we put the accelerator down again. Within 3 weeks, we had 82K in sales. That's sterling. So 104 total, 82 in 3 weeks. Average sale is £13,000. Average per call is 9.5 grand. And that's a closing rate of 72.73% in an industry where the average is about, was it 30 plus or minus 5, you told me?
It's usually 25% plus or minus 5%.
Oh, okay.
But most sales houses would snap your hand off at a consistent 20% KPI.
So basically, if we take the 25%, because it makes the maths easier, I'm almost 3 times an acceptable, more than an acceptable closing rate.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll come to why that is in a moment.
We will, because we've got a singing and dancing fancy new sales system, haven't we?
We have.
From the outside looking in, if we was just to present you that data, you'd probably think we were mental. Like, what the fuck have these boys been doing? What were they doing so poorly at the start of the year and what they're doing so good at the beginning of the year? But the truth is a lot simpler, to be honest. Occam's razor. We purposely took our foot off the gas because we were building something. We was building another program, another product. And we were figuring out our sales systems, our delivery systems, and all of that boring stuff. And then about 3-4 weeks ago, we was like, right, let's put pedal to the metal. And John was like, yeah, absolutely. Let's get on the sales train. Little did I know, John ran away with the sales process we spoke about and turned it upside down, inside out, tore it to shreds, put it back together again, burnt it because he didn't like it, went and got some more new raw materials, and has built an absolute masterpiece of a sales system which has allowed us to do those numbers with such a high close rate. Is that right, John?
It is. Let me explain. I mean, why we suddenly decided to put our foot down is not the point. There's some personal stuff going on in my life that meant I have to work less and more effectively, which is actually a good thing because it meant me out of focus. So the first thing we did was we set our intention. That's really important. But what we did figure was we set the intention, we know what we wanted to do, so then we decided to focus. Now, I came to the realization, and this is really actually very important for everyone. I came to the realization I didn't need to learn any more marketing. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not claiming I know everything because clearly I don't. There's a lot of areas in marketing I know very little about, like Google AdWords, Facebook advertising. In principle I get it, but I don't know the details. But the thing is, I don't need to either. I know enough. I know more than enough to do what I want to do and to teach others to do what they want to do. I mean, in terms of people in the world and their knowledge of marketing, I'm probably in the top 1/100th of 1% because of my experience in it. I don't need to know any more marketing. What I need to do is keep doing more marketing, but do it focused. That was setting the intention. What are we going to do? We want to fill a leak and we want to get more people to call control. What I did decide I needed to do was get better at selling. It's all well and good putting leads into the business, but if my closing rate is only 20%, which is kind of industry average, 25%, which is industry average, 20%, which is acceptable. That's not good enough for me. I'm not an average kind of guy. So what I did is I studied selling. Now, I don't know how many of you people listening to this are autistic, or how many of you people, if you understand what it's like when you are autistic, when you have a special interest. To put some context around this, when I applied for a place on my degree course in 1986, the guy turned me away. He said, I hadn't got any A levels or anything. I just got O levels and a BTEC level 3 from BT. I was just a fucking technician. And on paper, I wasn't particularly well qualified. And the guy says, you won't be able to keep up with the maths. We want A-level students only. So in a fit of petulance, I slammed the phone down on him because I got the rejection letter. So I phoned him up and then I slammed the phone down when he said that. And then I rethought my position. I actually wrote him a letter of apology and he called me in for an interview. And he said, look, I'm going to offer you a place. Not because I think you're competent necessarily, but because you had the balls to apologise to me. And that alone has given me, I'll take a chance on you. 4 years later, I graduate with a first at the top of my class. I got the most marks of anyone on the entire course. I more than vindicated his choice. But that's because I studied. Okay. Well, I've done the same kind of intensive study of selling. And I, as Connor said, I put together a system. I tested it. It worked. Didn't like it. Too exhausting. So I tore it down again, burned it up and created another one. And that works like a dream. Put context on that, okay? Hitherto, I would wake up in the mornings with a sales call in that day and I'd be dreading it. And I'd be exhausted at the end of it. So, yes or no. Whether I sold something or not, I'd be exhausted. Yesterday, I did one and I made a sale, of course, 18K. And I came off it and I want to do another one now. Because it's the way it works is I actually close the sale up front. So in the first 10 minutes, I know whether it's going to be a no or not.
Which is incredible.
So I'm with a very high degree of confidence. What it means is I never get told at the end, no, that's too expensive, can't afford it, I'm going to think about it. Those three things are not possible.
And I don't think there's a single person here listening to this podcast that doesn't have some form of sales meeting within their process, whether they're submitting things for tender. There's still those meetings before the contracts are actually signed, when you get that moment where they're about to sign the contract, pen is about to meet the paper, and they go, anything we can do about that price? There'll be people that
wouldn't happen to me. It couldn't happen to me.
And there's people that are listening to this that probably run very similar business to us, that definitely run sales meetings. And they're probably learning off the same people that we once upon a time learned from before we thought, no, fuck this. This is all shit.
Let's do it better.
Burn it, burn it, burn it. It's exhausting. It's complex. It's too scripted. So we burnt it. But there's one thing that you skipped over at the beginning there that I do want to cover quickly. We both had circumstances either thrusted upon us or decided that we were going to enter into that really put some constraints on us and the business.
Definitely.
And this is really important. And John skimmed over it rightfully because the sales is the magic here. But if we're going to give you a complete story as to how and why this has happened, we need to start there. Shit happened is the short version. Shit happened. And at the time shit happened, we had a vision of a products business where we had a couple of higher end things, but then lots of smaller products below it. A tall pyramid is the way to describe it. We'd have multi-layers and lots of products all knocking around. Circumstances obviously conspired against us, and we were like, we can't run that sort of business anymore. It's too complex, it's too time intensive, and it will be a nightmare to manage. So we said, what do we do? And we was like, well, we need to sell fewer things. Check the grammar, it's perfect. For far more money. So we asked ourselves, what does that look like? We embraced the constraints. We was like, well, if John can only work this many hours and Connor can only work at these specific times per day, how do we get maximum money while still delivering a world-class client experience within these constraints? And rather than trying to find ways around them, we just embraced them and said, right, these are the boundaries that we have to operate within. We came up with world-class solutions. And then we was like, right, that's all we're selling. And once you know you're only selling really two things, the sales game becomes a lot fucking easier, because you've not got 10 different products flying through your mind. You haven't got 10 different solutions flying through your mind at any given time. And there's a lesson in there, because if you feel like you can do anything at any given time, you'll likely do nothing. If you've got 5 different ways you're thinking of selling, well, I could sell via email, I could sell via action plans, I could sell via phone call, you'll likely do all of them very poorly, or none of them at all, because you'll be paralyzed by the choice. The same comes to your product lines. Well, I could do one-to-one coaching. Well, I could only do projects that are worth 5 million plus. When you've got all of these options, again, you'll probably settle somewhere in the middle for no good reason other than it feels right and it's a safe choice. But it's not often the right choice. And the reason it gets like that is because there's no constraints put upon you. Constraints breed creativity. Constraints give you focus. And you should always be introducing constraints onto yourself, even if there are none being forced upon you. We do this all the time here at Well-Fed Business. Obviously, we've got little Holly that does a lot of the project work with me, so we can let John off the leash and be Mr. Salesman. And if we've got a project where everything is open-ended and we've got 1,000,001 options, we'll purposely introduce constraints, because that gives us a very narrow, I won't say laser focus because I know how much it pisses John off, gives us a very narrow focus and few toys to play with, which forces us to maximize the blocks that we have. 2 world-class products that has made it fucking easy for John to sell, because you can't sell shit if you got a shit product.
Well, on that topic, I mean, it's simple. You can imagine a kind of a very condensed dialogue. You know, here's your problem. Here's the problem as I see it. We can solve it. The next step is this, and there's only one, so it's dead simple. There's only one thing we sell, and it will solve your problem. There's no ifs and buts, and you either have it, or you don't. Well, you know, that in a nutshell is my sales process, pretty much.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot more than that, but effectively, we sell one thing. I mean, we actually sell 2. We sell core control and then elite, but those 2 things, they're a vertical. They're a silo. They're not a fucking horizontal. So elite is a like a more concentrated, focused, more time with us version of core control.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what we sell. And if you want something different, go somewhere else. And the thing is, because of our front end marketing and our pre-sales process with Connor on the triage, we are only ever speaking to people for whom that solution will work. We're not speaking to people it's not appropriate for, with a 90% probability. That's why I have my sales call, just in case somebody gets through Connor's net.
Yeah.
You know, and this is not difficult. I mean, it's not complicated. It's simple. It's not easy, because I'm not going to go into it now. If you want to know this, you have to pay us. But the sales process, I've completely turned it around on its head. Okay, it even goes against what I have done and taught in the past. Not that I taught was wrong, because it wasn't, because it obviously worked. I mean, I've been doing it for years and I've made a lot of money doing it. But this is better,
Yes,
and it's a complete reversal of everything everybody else believes is true.
You probably, to bring this into perspective, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe your previous close rate with the old system was 35%.
Something like that, yeah.
It was around 35%, which at the time we were happy with. There was no burning desire to be like, right, we've got to get it up to 50, was there, at the time?
No.
It was like, oh, we'll tighten up the qualification maybe a little bit on the front end. We're learning from the sales calls. The wrong sort of people perhaps are getting through. That's why it's lower. But not once did we look at the sales process. Not once. We looked more at the qualification, the quality of leads.
The marketing as well.
The marketing. But we embraced the constraints, and then we set a focus. We said, right, we're entering a season of sales. We are going to become the dog's bollocks at sales. We've always been more than good enough at sales, more than understood it as a concept, a fuzzy concept. We've more than understood it enough to teach it, give advice, deliver results for ourselves and our clients. But obviously, as John said, that's never enough for him. John went away to study it, because we set our intentions, right? We're only selling these things. We embraced the constraints. We changed our job roles within the business, our responsibilities, our tasks. We turned everything upside down, and then we focused. And we focused on selling. And funnily enough, what you focus on,
get more of it.
you get more of it. It tends to grow. When you focus on sales, funnily enough, you make more fucking sales. Where your attention goes, the thing fucking grows. I think the cringy saying is.
Yeah, that's straight out of NLP or something.
That is
Now,
very NLP.
something else now. Okay, we did all this regardless of how we kind of felt about it. I didn't want to do sales calls. I absolutely did not want to do sales calls again because I've done them in the past over the last 5 years. I've done a lot of them and they're exhausting. And I was thinking, this is why we were going to build a product business and sell it with video sales letters, which I'm more than equipped to write as a fucking A-list copywriter, etc. Because I didn't want to do sales calls. But then when these circumstances came along, and it was choices, actions, consequences. If we'd have carried on, we would not have made enough money. You just wouldn't have done it. They're in a slowly sinking ship. We just wouldn't have been able to sustain it. So if I wanted the consequences of loads of shitload of money, more than we might ever made before, I had to take certain actions. That was a choice. So it's like I didn't have to do sales calls, but if I didn't, the consequence would be it'd be a fucking disaster. So my next thing was, okay, I've got to do sales calls. So how can I make sales calls bearable, better? Well, okay, I have to change the way I'm selling. So that's what I did. And it is fucking, even though I say it myself, it is inspired. It is brilliant. It is world class.
It is brilliant. It is world class. And there's something interesting that you did there. You found yourself in a situation where it was like, right, got to do sales calls because historically that's the thing that's produced us the most amount of cash. But you changed the narrative around it. You asked yourself a good question. How can I make this more bearable? And asking yourself the right questions in difficult situations is the way out of any difficult situation. Simply by inverting the questions that you're asking yourself, you'll come up with better answers. And John asked himself that question and he was like, well, I need to speak less because speaking is tiring.
Yeah.
And I need to have less, scripted questions written down because they feel awkward. And that's not
I
really
need
how
to get
John wrote. John
I need to
goes.
get answers quicker. I need to get the end of the call as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I never cared whether it was yes or no. I lost any emotional connection to sales a long, long time ago, so I never cared about the outcome. But just purely out of energetic terms and temporal terms, I wanted to get the no. I want to get a no in the first 2 minutes on the call if possible.
Yeah,
Now,
go
I've
for
not
no.
lost anything. Here's the thing, people say, "Oh, you can't do that because you might lose a sale." I never had a sale. You can't lose what you haven't got. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the call yesterday was about an hour and 20 minutes, as I recall. The one before that was nearer 2 hours. They average between an hour and a half and 2 hours. If it's going to be a no, I want to get to no in 5 minutes. If I go to an hour and a half and it's still a no, okay, that's acceptable. I don't feel anything about it, but it's still been a waste of my time. So as quickly as I humanly can, that was my defining thing. I want to get that no as early as I possibly can. The
Mm-hmm.
whole system is based on that. Most people listening to this won't have the courage to do what's required to get a no as early as possible because they are living in the vain hope that somehow between the start of the call when the prospect has got no intention of buying and the end, some magic will happen and they'll change their minds. No, it never works like that. You can't convince or persuade anyone to do anything. And if you do, that's when you start getting people maybe reneging on their agreement. Buyer's remorse. I promise you, I will never get buyer's remorse from my sales process. Ever. It's just not possible.
And we've purposely defied industry norms in that sense as well. So before, the conventional wisdom is you don't get off the phone without if you're getting them to fill in, say, payment details online, you stay on the phone with them whilst they do that to make sure that they do. You essentially keep them hostage. That's the conventional wisdom that's taught in the world of sales. The conventional wisdom is also you take the number yourself, which is I'm pretty sure is a breach of fucking probably some GDPR or something. But you take the details, the card details yourself to store locally. So if the first charge fails, you can try and charge the card again yourself. The other conventional wisdom is if they don't close on your first close, you've got 9 different other closes to follow up with. All of these things introduce friction in a bad way. Pressure. And the more pressure you put on a prospect, the higher chance there's going to be a nice big refund. And then Stripe or Go Cardless or your bank itself might close you down. And then you've got no way of taking payments. And you've fucked it all up just because you've entered into a high pressure sales tactics game.